Is Ippo ready to be a monster? Since chapter 1079, this is the burning question that has been hovering over our heads. To be a truly complete boxer, Ippo needs to transcend. Everybody wants to know, will Ippo cross the line? Since it's so long ago, let's go back and take a look at the chapter to get a clear image of what Takamura meant with the line. Ippo and Takamura are having a conversation about Ippo's loss to Gonzalez. Takamura mentions that the coach wanted Ippo to make excuses after the loss. Ippo can't grasp that logic because he was beaten by KO. If he made excuses for that, then the coach would tell him to not be pathetic. He would be mad, but he would tell him to deal with it. That's what Takamura replies before Ippo could finish his sentence. He goes on to say that Ippo should give the coach a chance to chew him out. This causes even more confusion for Ippo. The important part of the conversation already started. The fact that Ippo doesn't understand is the problem to begin with. Ippo gets frustrated and demands an answer. Takamura, without even looking at him, explains that once you accept it, you're done. If I only hit him first there, if I somehow could have dodged that, no matter how trivial it is, you need to gripe about it. Ippo says that the coach would be mad if he made such excuses. Takamura confirms that he would be mad indeed, but he would be happy. No matter how arrogant or lame excuses would seem, or how pathetic they sound like, it's the feeling that you haven't truly lost that keeps you struggling. It keeps you fighting. Ippo insists that Gonzalez was simply stronger. It was a clear-cut KO. Even if he were to fight him again, he doesn't want to say it, but while he's thinking about it, he realizes what Takamura means. And then Takamura says it again. If you admit it, then it's over. For a man to stand up again, he needs one thing: to make excuses. For someone like Takamura to say that shows how aware he is of the psychological side of boxing across all skill levels. He knows exactly what even boxers below his skill level go through. Ippo literally feels a shock go through his body when Takamura says that. He says that boxers who keep going, even though they seem like a joke, still have that fire inside. The coach knows this because he's a veteran of the game. Ippo, even more depressed after hearing Takamura's words, thinks about hanging it up. Takamura tells him that he's done really well while he knocks on the tree. Then he gives the tree a strong whack and catches the leaves falling down. He does this to show Ippo how he started his journey back then. He says that he would never dream that the kid from back then could become the Japanese champion. He's really impressed. It seems cold and disconnected, but he means it with true honesty. After hearing this, Ippo thinks about the days back then and how he caught the 10 leaves. Takamura tells him he did good. He doesn't have to force himself to keep going. Ippo has a surprised look on his face after hearing the direct wording Takamura chose. But he switches to a lighter expression and half-heartedly replies that he still wants to box. While lifting his foot, Takamura says that he can continue to box, as a hobby. Ippo seems surprised by Takamura's answer. Now Takamura puts his foot into the grass and says, "You wanted to be strong, right? You were the Japanese champ, that's plenty strong, but you can't handle what comes next." Then he draws a line into the grass with his foot. He states that Ippo pushed himself to his limit. If his motivation is to see how far he can go, then he should stop while he's ahead. Ippo now contemplates his own limit. Something he probably has never thought about before aside from a conditioning point of view during a fight. Now a beautiful panel from the whole scene both are talking in. "Past this line is the world. Don't cross it." Takamura turns around to continue his road work and tells Ippo that he got to be the Japanese champion while treating boxing as a hobby. He must not cross the line with a half-assed attitude and give the coach hope. At this point, Ippo is shouting out of confusion and starts to run after Takamura. He asks him what he means. False hope? Give who false hope? Takamura shouts at Ippo to stay right there and literally stuns him with his voice. Ippo stops right before the line, not moving an inch. Takamura says the following words: "Cross it and you're dead. Past that line, that's where only the real monsters can survive. Don't cross the line if you want to stay human." While Ippo processes what he just heard, he slowly takes his foot down. Takamura tells him goodbye and takes off. We see him disappearing into the world he just mentioned to Ippo. The world Ippo isn't ready for. Then another wide shot where Takamura runs off and Ippo watches him in silence. This panel shows Ippo's conflict perfectly. It's only him and the line. How hard can it be to cross it? He thinks about it for a second and then attempts to rush after Takamura. But As he hovers above the line with his foot, he hesitates and once again takes a step back. For the first time, he can't step forward. This is a fundamental moment in Ippo's life. He knows Takamura is right. That's why he looks shocked several times during their conversation. Stepping over that line would mean that he's all the things Takamura mentioned. Making excuses, not giving up, keeping up the struggle. He couldn't say it out loud that Gonzalez would beat him if they fought a second time. But by not stepping over the line, he acknowledged it. And he accepted that he wasn't a struggler. Struggling for what exactly anyway? To answer that, I have another great example to show what crossing the line means. Probably an even better example than Takamura. Funnily enough, this incident takes place exactly at the same location. The line. Do you remember when Miyata came to the tree where the line is and wanted to ask Ippo something? This is a badass panel, by the way. Miyata wants to know something important. He knew that he would run into Ippo there. After making fun of Ippo's buzz cut, he asks him why he is still training. Ippo explains that his students are training, not him. Miyata spots the weights around Ippo's wrist and tells him that he shouldn't need them if he's not training. Ippo kind of takes a way out and says that he got used to wearing them. Miyata pulls out a counter and says that Ippo needs the weights. Ippo is in the corner and doesn't really have a solid answer for that question. Now Ippo's students get irritated by Miyata's tone and even attempt to attack him. Before they can even reach him, they are pulled back by Itagaki. Look at which point they are pulled back at. Or should I say, which line. They can't cross the line. They are not allowed. But bear with me, I'll get to the most important point in a second. Ippo's students and Itagaki talk about Miyata. Itagaki tells them that Miyata is the OPBF champion, which is a shock to them. They ask Itagaki whether Ippo is stronger. Itagaki thinks about this question while he looks at Ippo and Miyata standing across from each other. Ippo standing on the same side he stood when Takamura drew the line. And Miyata, where does he stand? Right where the non-humans are, the monsters who crossed the line. They continue their dialogue. Ippo talks about Miyata's recent match and mentions that although he wasn't in his best condition, he never doubted he would win. Miyata straight up says that it was pitiful. After some hesitation, Ippo says this: "If I'm the reason why you're not fighting at your best, I'd like you to stop fixating on me." Miyata's look gets dark after hearing this. Ippo doesn't notice this immediately and continues by shouting, "It's true, isn't it?" He says that he looked up to Miyata. He danced around the ring like he had wings. That is what made Ippo admire him. After a certain point, Miyata started to force people into submission with brute force. He started taking unnecessary punches, but that's not him. That's not his style of boxing. He tells Miyata that he has his own path to follow. He doesn't want him to stop here. He tells him not to go through the hellish weight management at featherweight anymore, because he's never going to return. He says this while looking at the line. Miyata is aware that the weight management is eating away at him. He says that it's ironic. The class of feathers is where his wings were clipped. Ippo emphasizes that Miyata should switch to a higher weight class where he could use his true abilities. Miyata says that he will switch, depending on Ippo's answer. He goes on to mention Ippo's training that's even harsher than what active boxers go through. He says that he did some research on his own. He asks Ippo who came to the conclusion, who called him punch drunk. Ippo shrinks from frustration. He doesn't have an answer, because no one made an official diagnosis. Miyata has the answer he came for and turns around to leave. And now the most important part of this scene. I won't make any promises. What lies ahead is for me to decide, and me alone. It's my path to travel. We see him disappear into the horizon of the world as he leaves Ippo behind the line. Ippo acknowledges that metaphor and even thinks about how Miyata vanished into the distance. This fact is a heavy burden on his heart. He wants to return in order to cross the line as well. But let me tell you what the line is. Why is Miyata already across the line? He isn't the world champ yet, is he? The answer is one single word: independence. Miyata decided independently that he wants to stay in the featherweight division in order to fight against Ippo one day. It literally cripples him and decimates his potential. Nobody told him to do this. He goes through the pain leading up to and during every fight just to follow his own goals. Takamura is the same. He wants to conquer 6 weight classes. He decided this on his own because he saw how happy it would make Kamogawa. He set a precise goal and decided to suffer to reach it. So the second and final aspect of being a monster is sacrifice. Miyata and Takamura both go through hellish conditions independently in order to reach goals that are important to them. Losing your humanity isn't the condition that makes you a thoughtless monster. It's the place where you sacrifice parts of yourself in the fire that forges champions. Ippo never had such a vision. He never went through this type of hardship. Yes, he went through injuries caused by his dependency on the Dempsey role and his forward fighting style. But he never decided on a single goal independently and suffered for it. He was in his ideal weight class from the get-go and only did the steps Kamogawa told him. When he lost the chance to fight Miyata, Ippo lost his first and biggest goal in his journey as a boxer. During the preparation for the Miyata fight, he was on a high gear, inventing new methods to work around Miyata's counters. After that, he lost his true ambitions. Sure, he continued his path towards the World Championship, but he wasn't inventive and didn't make any independent decisions for his strategy. The Kojima fight was an emotional mess, and after that, Gonzalez and Guevara happened. In the Gonzalez fight, Ippo was straight up eating counters and worked only with grit. His goal was none other than proving that Kamogawa's boxing can work. He wanted to prove that it could stand up to the best in the world. It's a cute one, but it's not the solution on the world level. Takamura proved that already. He pulled out Kamogawa's boxing in a single round against Brian Hawk and then proceeded to fight with his own style. It's not that Kamogawa's boxing doesn't work, it's that Ippo used it as a safety net to rely on. He thought he could skip thinking on his own as long as he used the moves Kamogawa taught him. And that's why he face-tanked the whole arsenal Gonzalez threw at him. But now it's different. Ippo has been helping the best of the world with their world title strategies. He's been in Mexico absorbing boxing from every angle possible. He's constantly wearing the weights around his wrists. He is training students on his own. He knows what other mentalities look like and what is needed to motivate a boxer. Teaching others forces us to be independent, and the sacrifice he made was abstaining from the sport he loves. Once he's back, he'll be a complete fighter with a mind of his own. Then he'll truly want to know what strength looks like in others. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.